And it's the little things that you have to kind of catch yourself thinking about in the most kind of autopilot situation. So when you're just going about your day, when you're going about your routine, what are you telling yourself in your head?
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. My guest today is a recruitment specialist, a TEDx speaker as of a few days ago. And he also has his own podcast, which is called Awkward Turtle at Work, a light stand-up comedy style podcast. And be sure to check it out. Welcome to the podcast, Emery Fung. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Excited for this chat.
Yeah, likewise, mate. How was your TEDx experience? I read your post. I know you're one of those dream comes true. How was the preparation? How was the whole journey?
Yeah, it was quite surreal. Honestly, it only happened, well, at the time of recording, it only happened 2 weekends ago. So it's still quite fresh. The video's not quite out yet. I think it does take a long time for them to get it approved and things. So obviously once it's out, I'll be trying to kind of share that around. Having said that, I'm not quite sure if I'm ready to watch myself back yet about how I did. I really enjoyed it, but if I'm honest, I don't really remember much of it. It was such a surreal and kind of out of body experience. I just remember being on stage, and then kind of towards the end, I was thinking, I'm almost through my script, and then I kind of like messed up the last 2 lines a little bit, but it was a really fun experience. I definitely recommend anyone who are into kind of stuff, public speaking, or just have a really kind of good story to tell, to really apply for it and try it, because you can apply for it as well. It's not, I got invited, but it was also like you can also apply and submit your application to do it as well. And the whole preparation was fun, in a sense where, when would you ever really have a time where you can sit down, kind of rethink about everything you want to talk about, kind of put it all in nicely into like a little speech and stuff. So it was in a way, quite a therapeutic experience to kind of just go down and kind of think about all the things that I've kind of gone through and things, all the experiences and all the kind of things that I want to kind of spread in terms of my messages and things. And it was my first ever solo public speaking thing and being on stage. So that was also a thing that I really had to kind of research and know how to do it and find kind of the bits and tips and kind of things to help me out. And, luckily, because of the podcast I do as well, I had this connection that I had who, if you're listening, Laura, shout out to Laura, who she is a fantastic person. She is a great coach. And basically I asked her for advice, and then she put me through in touch with quite a few people that she knows in her circle that's done previous TEDx before as well, or have trained people to do TEDx before. So I have just had quite a lot of course people who's done it before to kind of just get a feel about what to expect, what to look out for and things. But yeah, so it was a good kind of experience to go through, but also a bit surreal kind of being on stage on your own. Congratulations,
mate. I look forward to hearing the playback of it. How, in terms of the journey, like the preparation journey leading up to the event, how nervous were you?
So see, that's the thing. That's a key word. So I was so nervous, and being a podcaster, and I'm sure you are, I'm sure you do the same. You listen to a lot of podcasts, and all the podcasts, there was a couple of themes that I listened to was about anxiety with public speaking and how to get through that. Essentially, kind of what we know as nerves. But I think the key thing that really helps me was actually to not see nerves as nerves and turn that narrative into excitement. So rather saying you are nervous, you're just saying you're excited, because it is actually just energy in your body, and you get this adrenaline that you have. So it's not always nerves, but we always assume it's nerves when we feel that kind of weird feeling in our tummy and your heartbeat rise and things like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, in the preparation of it, apart from kind of learning how to deal with nerves and things, I also actually print out my script when it's finished. I laminated it and I stuck it on my shower. So whenever I was in the shower, I would just like read a couple of lines out loud in the shower. And it's kind of like a safe space as well when you're alone in the shower. Some people like to sing. I guess I was just reading my own script. And that really helped me to kind of use the voice as loud as like you would when you're on stage. So that was a really good thing that I think I did. It was quite sad when I had to take it off the shower on a day off to bring the script with me to the thing on the actual day. I was like, it's been up there for about a month when I took it off, and now my wall just looks very empty.
Well, you can start prepping for the next one.
Well, I would love to do another one. Maybe not so soon, but I would definitely be up for another one in the future.
Hey, I want to talk about your podcast, Awkward Turtle at Work. Why did you call it Awkward Turtle?
Yeah, good question. Well, I mean, a bit of a personal kind of reason first, but it kind of all makes sense afterwards. So turtle is my favorite animal. Most people like dogs and cats. I just like turtle. I don't know why. You can see it there as well. I just like how they just seem very wise, and they're always in groups. They can be in water. They can be on land. And I think I just relate to kind of them a lot. Awkward turtle is kind of like a cultural kind of phenomenon as well. It's a kind of saying. So I just thought, that actually matches quite well, or it kind of rings in people's ears. And I think as well, apart from that, I think we are probably a lot awkward than we like to admit in terms of in life, at work, at whatever. So that's how I came up with it.
Oh, terrific. So there's been a lot of talks about the Great Resignation. A lot of it has to do with COVID. People are getting burnt out. Given you're in this recruitment space, right, what are some of the trends that you're seeing, and what challenges are people facing, and what are some of the solutions people can think of?
Yeah, well, I think a lot to do with it, I think it's just because I think we never really had a lot of time, especially here in Hong Kong, that people really kind of have a downtime to think about what they want to do. And I think COVID was in some ways, I want to be very careful kind of how I put this up. I think in some ways a silver lining for a lot of people, in a sense where, including myself, where it's given me a lot more time and space really to kind of just slow down a little bit, kind of rethink about what was very important to me, how I live my life, how should I spend my time, all that kind of stuff. But especially if you live in Hong Kong or any big cities in the world, that rarely happens. It's so easy access for the restaurants and bars and everything. Something's always going on somewhere in the city. So I think it was a sense where everyone just kind of, oh, actually, I do quite enjoy having alone time. I do quite enjoy being at home. I do quite enjoy having a hobby or an interest, or having like a morning routine before you go to work. And I think that's kind of what it came from. And I do think it's definitely a long time coming in terms of people burning out. I think I've read somewhere, I don't remember exactly what the stat is, but basically the burnout rate, it's been like the highest it's ever been in the past, like 10, 20 years. And the age of burning out just keeps getting younger and younger. And what is insane to me sometimes is that actually I speak to a lot of people who are still in school or just finished university. They already feel burnt out because of the school system here. So let alone kind of going to a full-time role when you finish, you're being at school for how many years you are. And I think we really have to rethink about just what it is that's important to us. Not necessarily important, but what do we actually enjoy doing? And is that what we want to spend our time doing? Working kind of for someone else, or working for 10 hours a day, and then you go home, you sleep, and then next day, same thing again. So I think COVID has put a lot of people kind of into where they can have that room to think about things a little bit more.
Hey, I read from something that you wrote, and quote unquote, 90% of the people that you meet are not fired up.
Yeah.
What's the cause of it?
Yeah. Well,
what are the symptoms?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, recruitment. I don't know how much people know about being a recruiter, being an agency recruiter, but obviously our job is to match people to the right job with the right candidates, and we kind of work for both the clients and the candidates. And what basically happens is that kind of in a more of a, I guess, solid in terms of what we do every day is essentially listen to both sides of why people don't. So we hear from the candidates all day long why they don't enjoy their job, why they want to go for a next job. And the same side of the coin, we hear from the hiring managers of why do they find it so difficult to hire people who stay in their job, and why there's such a high turnover rate and things like that. So that's kind of the inspiration why I wanted to start this podcast about kind of being at work, because I think maybe perhaps we don't see work as what it should be. I think a lot of people like to keep it separate, which is what people call it work-life balance. But to me, that doesn't make any sense, because I see work as kind of part of my entire life. It's not just one fraction of my life. It's kind of the overall, it's one kind of area, but it's not kind of a separate area, if that makes sense. So I think people are not kind of seeing the importance of work in a sense where it does really shape your life. It determines where you live, it determines who your communities are, who your circles are, what the timetable, your schedules, everything, right? I think it sucks that a lot of people feel like they can't have that and have to give up on that for a stable paycheck. And especially now in 2021 or 2022 almost, it is very easy, or it is a lot easier compared to even just 5 years ago to really start your own thing if you wanted to. And the weekends on your laptop, most people have got laptops in Hong Kong, if not everyone. So I think we are kind of at the stage where we need to kind of see what we can use our resources for and turn that into something positive. And the reason being people are not being engaged in work, I think, is because it's just that not a lot of people chose what they do, in a sense where they really chose. And what I mean by that is that we basically get put into situations when we're even kids, when we were 4, 5, 6 years old, where, what do you want to be when you're older? What's your career path? And that's insane, because that's the age when we don't even choose our own food. We don't even choose what we wear. We don't even choose anything at that age. So how are we meant to know how to decide what to do when we're older? If you want to bring it forward and talk about even when you are, depending on where you go to school, where you study, international standards are quite different. But generally speaking, I would say by the time you're 16, 17, that's pretty much when you start to get to choose your subjects, and that basically shape up to what degree you do, and that shape up to what kind of job area-ish what you'll be doing. Of course, not everyone does what the job that what their degree offered, but generally speaking, it does kind of give you a framework of where you can and cannot go into. So to me, that's pretty insane where we are choosing that 10 years in advance of what we are supposed to be doing for the rest of our lives. And I think that's the reason why people, especially let's say around kind of late 20s, early 30s, where they kind of think, okay, done my degree, I've gone into work, I've worked for about 10 years now, but I still feel like I'm not really doing anything. And I feel like that's because when they were younger, when they were 16, 17, we never give them the opportunity to really think about what it is that we want to do. Maybe not even given an opportunity. We didn't even know what the options are. We didn't have the full picture. We didn't have the full information on what route we can go into. With the environment in Hong Kong, it's difficult because the space and the housing itself is a big issue that we have as a city. So a lot of people do want to find a good job that pays well for them to obviously to afford to live. It's one of the most expensive cities in the world to live. So I do appreciate that part of the argument as well, but I think there's definitely more to be done as kind of us as individuals.
Yeah. So as individuals, what if people are not, I guess, satisfied with where they are, the career perhaps, what can they do about it?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's a lot to do with asking yourself what that is, because I think no one can answer that for you. No one can tell you what you like the most, but it has to be very honest. And it's not talking about setting aside 2 hours on a Sunday to think about what you want to do. It's about actually really being conscious and being present every single thing that you do, and think about how it makes you feel. And for example, I'm a very sporty person. I do a lot of sports. I like to have my own timetable, I like my own lifestyle. Work is still very important to me, and I would say I'm work or career is quite high up on my list of priorities. But at the same time, I don't want that to be the only thing. And if you look at my whole life altogether, the reason what I do now is because I've looked at my life, I looked at what I don't enjoy. For example, if you like to be in small team, big team, if you like to be in international setting or a local setting or whatever it may be, those metrics will really differ depending on the person. So it's really about really asking yourself on a daily basis and kind of in a sense where you're kind of like almost interrogating yourself where, okay, I like to be in a small company, but why? A lot of people stop at that. I want to be a small company. I want to be in a startup. I want to be where I can learn a bit of everything. But you have to keep asking why. Okay, so I want to be in a small company. Why is that? Because I like to know all of what goes on in the company. Okay, but why is that? You've got to keep asking the why, and then once you've asked yourself enough whys, and you've got a lot more kind of clear understanding of what that thing is, then it really basically will lead you into what you want to do next. And I think the most common thing a lot of people say in Hong Kong is that work is important because it pays your bills, it pays where you live, right? But what I like to ask is that, okay, but why is that important? Why is the money important? Is it because you have a certain lifestyle that you want to uphold? Is it because you have a family that you have to support? Is it because you just want the money because you think it's good to have money saved up, for example? And those three reasons are entirely different, and those three reasons will lead you to different roads. So it's just very important to just keep asking yourself why. It sounds very simple, but I bet you a lot of people, when they sit down and think about it, they actually go, I have no idea why I work so hard. I've just been told to work hard and have this money saved up and then buy a house. Yeah. But then you ask, why do you want to buy a house? Is it a must for you to get a house? And things like that and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I've got to say, I really love asking myself those questions. And it's almost like a rabbit hole. Like the more you ask yourself, the more you realize that I actually don't have answers for some of these questions. And then you start asking people. I know you're quite big on mentorship. How important is mentorship to you, and how does someone find a good mentor?
Yeah, I actually just enrolled to a program on mentorship. And so since COVID also has been a line or a time in my life where I had the opportunity to kind of slow down and think about things my way, and I made a lot of changes since then. And because of kind of the road I'm doing now at the moment is that I'm figuring out what's next for me, or what does that look like in 5 years' time. So I'm also in the process of kind of looking at mentors and kind of thinking about how I can kind of go to the next step. And I just actually into a LGBT plus program, a mentorship program, which is hosted by the community business, and they have this great people, mentors enrolled there as well. And I really believe having a mentor there will really help. I haven't personally done any mentorship in the past, but I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really excited about it because I think sometimes a lot of people expect if you find the right mentor, they will give you the answers. They will give you the what to do and where to go and that kind of thing. But I think in reality, that's the false expectation. And that if you think mentorship is what that's about, then that is not for you, because no one ever is able to tell you exactly what you should do and how you should do it. But the fact that you can throw some ideas to someone who is probably a bit more open, because that's what they become mentors. And I think for mentors as well, it's also a chance for them to learn off the mentees in a sense, where because usually mentors are typically probably a bit more mature. They will also want to be trying to keep in touch with what the younger generations are thinking about. And so I think it's kind of like a two-way street that both people are learning of each other. It's still like a mentor and mentee relationship, but a lot of people I've spoken to, I think the best way to go about it is kind of find, let's say, someone that you really think has got a similar career path, or if not got some kind of similarity to what you want to do or what you want to become eventually. And you both kind of see it as like a check-in every couple of weeks and just throw ideas off each other, bounce it off and see what it is. But I mean, choosing the right mentor, I think a lot of it is to do with how well you get on this person, or how safe do you feel telling them things? How safe do you feel expressing an idea and not being kind of scared that, oh, do I sound stupid, or is it a stupid question? I think that's very important, because I think if you have a mentor and you don't feel comfortable asking them questions that you really actually want to ask, then there's no point really having that relationship.
Yeah, I think to your point, some of us are too scared of being judged by other people, right?
Yeah, and I'm still the same thing. I'm still working through it. I think we are all conditioned, especially like social media and Instagram and that kind of stuff. Your life is essentially now is based on like how many likes you get on a post, right?
Oh, yeah. You got to uphold this imaginary self-image.
Exactly. And I think it's a lot of unlearning to do, which I'm also kind of learning how to unlearn a lot of things. But it's going to be a long thing, and nothing's going to happen overnight. So just keep doing it and keep asking yourself why, and keep asking yourself. I mean, that's the same thing. So why do you care so much about what? I still haven't figured out that answer for myself. I'm still thinking about it every day and night whenever I get self-conscious when I say things and get anxiety about posting things online. But I think it's a part of the process. It's part of how you learn and how you grow as a person as well.
Yeah, that's also one of the things that I've learned. I don't know whether you agree with this, but I think one of the things that I've learned in the past 2 years is that there's always more than one perspective for every issue, right? We can look at COVID as a global pandemic, but it could also open up a lot of possibilities for different people like yourself, right? You started doing something more creatively, you had your own TEDx, you started your own podcast. And I think people just need to be more open about certain things, and when certain crises happen, and might not necessarily a bad thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so you touch on D&I. So on this podcast, I've actually spoken to quite a few inspiring individuals who've had similar issues. I spoke to a lady, Ben Chick. So she mentioned about her struggles growing up. She was diagnosed with bipolar at the age of 23. And then she had a hard time getting network from her parents. And, on the second episode, we spoke to Sudesh, because she's leading the D&I initiative at a big global insurance company. So this LGBT is getting a lot of spotlight, and I know you're a big advocate on this topic. And also, I read a post that you did on social media recently. So you shared about this personal journey that you're going through yourself. Can you share a bit more about your experience, what it was like growing up? When did you discover or realize that you're a little different to what you had expected, or what other people had expected of you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's quite a long story, so I'll try and keep it short. But basically, I guess I've always known that I felt different, and I always knew kind of different, that I always felt like I was, but I never really felt comfortable kind of saying out loud, especially when I'm thinking about, when I was young, when I was in like primary school, for example. It was more like, I knew that I enjoy sports, I play football, and just the way I am, I was a bit more boyish, and people would think, oh, that's just kind of like a phase, things like that. And so that was kind of what happened when I was younger. But then that feeling never kind of really went. I was constantly thinking about it, and I was like, oh, why do I not like to, obviously not all girls have to play Barbie, but there was something that, oh, why do I never had an interest in those things? And that's how I thought it was. And then luckily, when I was growing up, I had a really strong support system around me, a lot of close friends that I was able to speak quite openly about to them about these sort of things. And I think as well, luckily, I was so young when I was able to express it, that people were a lot more open to it as well. And the environment where I lived in, I grew up in the UK, so it was probably easier in a sense where I lived away from my parents or in the boarding school. I didn't have to like hide myself 24/7. It was more when I came back for the summers, for the Christmases, that was probably a bit more harder, where, how I wear my clothes and where I buy my clothes and things that will become like maybe some conflicts there when I was much younger. But that's just one of the things that you have to go through when you're figuring out what it is. And I think that goes to the same as not just about gender. I think when you're a young boy, when you're a young girl, there's also a couple of years in your life, or maybe not, maybe even longer, where you're figuring out what your style is, figuring out what you like to wear. And that was exactly the same thing for me. Even though I felt different, but I didn't think I was so different that no one else could relate to. Because I think a lot of problems, if you kind of boil it down, it is pretty much the same thing that everyone goes through, but just in a different kind of context, if that makes sense. And yeah, and then, so I've always known, my close friends always knew and things. And then around maybe a year and a half ago, I wrote a post on LinkedIn about it. And the intention really was to, because I work in recruitment and it's essentially a sales job, people need to know my name. So my email address has changed and all that kind of stuff. So the post was really just purely just to say, this is just very briefly, my name is now Emery. You can now find me an email address, and explain very briefly the reasons why. And that was still when LinkedIn had like a cap on the post you can write. So there was like a limited amount of words you can put on a LinkedIn post. So it was a very brief one and didn't really think much of it. I just thought it's out there. If they see it, they see it. And then it's more about the clients and candidates knowing, where they can find me in the future. But the response was just overwhelmingly positive. I had people reaching out to me, I had strangers reaching out to me saying thank you for being honest and being open on LinkedIn, especially being in Asia. I had my old bosses coming up, texting me, saying congratulations. I've had my high school teachers commenting on the post, which I had never even thought about. They have me on LinkedIn because I grew up in Cornwall in the UK, which is a very small, a very remote kind of part of England, and not many people use LinkedIn there and things like that. So I was really surprised that it kind of reached over there as well. And it was just very nice knowing that people people remember me and people kind of were just very nice about it. So overall, it was a great experience. And because of the post, it got picked up a little bit around the community. And since then, I've done a lot more speaking stuff with corporate panels, especially during Pride Month last year. And it's led me on to do a lot of things. It's actually led me on to do TEDx as well. So, you never really know what doing one thing will lead you to the next day. Because the post was, like I mentioned, the only reason was because I just wanted a very clean message, a very standard kind of announcement, if you like, to be, okay, this is what's happening, this is my name now, and then leave it at that. And it's led me to this wonderful new world where I'm really enjoying myself at the moment.
That was super inspiring, and I'm really proud of you, mate.
Thank you.
Hey, just curious, how did you decide when is the right time to?
Yeah.
It sounded like you had this whole phase of discovering or rediscovering about yourself, and then was there a catalyst which kind of made you decide, okay, now is the right time. I'm going to have a chat with my parents. I'm going to come out. I'm going to write a post about it. So what was it?
Yeah. So first of all, personally, I don't love the word coming out because I think that that implies like a definite timeline where, this is kind of the day. And I think if most people, probably especially in the LGBT community, they will say, no one really just decides one day. It's more of a gradual thing that happens. And I guess it's more like the coming out, kind of the post on LinkedIn is more like a clear cut of a timeline, just because it was like on a LinkedIn post and things. But really, it was more about myself, where I've always told myself that I wanted to get everything done by the time I'm 30, and I'm getting closer to that age. It's one of those things where, when I was younger, because I always knew, I would always say, I'll do it when I'm older. I'll do it when I have my own money, when I've got the time. The same excuses that everyone else would have about working out or anything else they want to do, or start a business. We always try to put it off until later when we have the time. But when exactly is when you have time? Because no one really has like a empty month that nothing happens, especially now. It's a very classic way. I just kept delaying it, and then I just looked at one day, I was like, okay, actually, I know I'm really 30 fairly soon in terms of the kind of the timeline it will take for me to transition fully medically. So yeah, that's kind of what pushed me to really kind of be a bit more, I guess, open in a sense, where open in the wider community, because like I mentioned earlier, my friends knew, people around me knew. So it wasn't like it was from like a 0 to 100. It was more from the work perspective that I also had to be quite open with my clients and my candidates. So that was kind of really the reason why I chose that particular timeline to do it. But, if you ask me again, I think I was lucky that I did it at the time when I posted it, because I was thinking actually just recently that if I wrote that post, the same exact post, maybe even 2 years ago, I think the reaction would have been very different. The narrative about D&I has changed a lot in the last year, really, with COVID and equality and all the things that's happening in the world, that's really changed the way a lot of things are being spoken about in a social setting at work. I think I was lucky enough where the timing was kind of right at that time when I posted it. If I posted it maybe 2 years ago, I think the response would be very different. I think there'll be a lot more mixed responses. That's just what I assume. Hopefully it would not have been if I did that earlier. But I just felt like it was just the right time personally as well. And before I posted the LinkedIn, I spoke to a few people at work, especially a manager, and let them know, look, this is what's happening. So I still kind of had to kind of do the one-on-ones and inform the people that needed to be informed in a one-on-one situation, like HRs and things in regards to changing my name and things like that. That really was the kind of how it all works. But I think really it's just kind of what works for you, really. There's not a timeline or like an age or where point in your life you should do a certain thing. It's all about what you want to do, because I would have liked to do it a lot earlier, or I guess start the process a lot earlier than even back when I was in school, for example. But I think thinking back now in hindsight is a wonderful thing, but thinking back now, if I did it when I was 15 or 16, I think my mental kind of, I guess, approach about doing it or kind of the response I would get, I don't think I would have been able to handle it as well as I can now, if that makes sense.
So the context really matters, like you said, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So listening from your narrative, it sounded like everything is all positive, sunshine and rainbow, but I'm sure you must have had some rejections. Have you had, do you have any experiences to share? How did you handle rejection? And
yeah.
How did you build up your mental, you mentioned about mental strength and your mindset, right? How did you build it up? Obviously, as your age matures, it also helps, but in between, right? What have you done? Or if something said something nasty to you, or if someone gave you a rejection, right? How did you handle them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because I think also one of the reasons why I think a lot of people kind of are struggling with what they think work is or how important work is, because they don't want to try something new or try something they really enjoy and ultimately fail and ultimately get rejected and ultimately find out that, maybe my passion isn't enough for me to get my paycheck, for example. And I guess in hindsight as well, luckily that I actually had a lot of rejection when I was younger. I had to work probably a bit more hard than a lot of people around me to get what I wanted. In a sense, I was a Chinese person in a very kind of white-dominated part of the UK. I was in a boarding school. Even though obviously my parents are in Hong Kong, they sent me over there, but I didn't really have my parents around me most of the time across the year. So that gave me a lot of different perspective, how I needed to do things quite independently. So I was never really afraid to fail. I was never really it just never really crossed my mind when I was younger. And I think playing sports is also a big part of it as well, because when you're in sports, you either win, you lose, and you can't always win. So losing wasn't like a thing that I would avoid or I saw as a problem. To me, it was more like, if I lost, if I failed, if I did this, then that means I've got the next time to kind of improve better. So that's kind of always, I guess, in me, that I don't really mind failing in things. But having said that, obviously it still hurts. It still upsets me. No one likes to lose, and it's ultimately kind of what you make of it. So I guess to be a bit more personal as well, if we talk about in a romantic sense, I used to get rejected. A lot of it's because down to my gender issue, that ultimately they want to have a settle down, have a family, have kids and all that kind of stuff, and something that I would never be able to change. And when I was much younger, when you think, when you were much younger as well, romantic relationship was also kind of a really big part of your life. And so that used to make me feel really kind of bad about myself. I used to blame myself a lot, this kind of thing. But I think, like you said earlier, like as you age and as you kind of have a bit more life experience in things, you start to see things a bit differently. So I used to think, it's my fault. But now I've kind of changed it a little bit around, well, this is kind of who I am. This is part of me. If you compare it to heterosexual couples or whatever it may be, they still have issues in their relationships, or this person will also have baggage, will also have their faults, or have their disadvantages as a person. So that's just the same thing as mine. The context is different, but everyone's going to have some flaws in their lives. Mm-hmm. So I guess I stopped kind of seeing that as like a flaw of my own. It's just that everyone's going to have flaws, some parts in their life. It just so happens that my flaw, if you want to call it, is in this part. And it's what you kind of make of it and what you use that as. Yeah. A lot of people, I guess, when they fail, because they don't want to go through the fail again, they will change to a new thing or find something that's easier so they then don't have the fail. But failing is definitely one of the biggest things that you can have in life, because if you don't have any hardship, if you don't go through any experiences,
It doesn't make you stronger.
Extra hard, you have to do extra things for, then when you have a problem in life, then that's when you will really struggle, because you have no experience of dealing things about things on your own.
Yeah, and a lot of it, like you said, is really about reframing that situation, right? What can you make of it? Instead of focusing on the outcome, winning or losing, you really look at the process. What did you learn from that experience, right?
Yeah.
Hey, what is that one thing that our listeners could do to, differently to spread positivity? Because this podcast is all about spreading hope, love, inclusion, everything that you love. But that's also within my core belief, right? One of the reasons why I started this podcast was I obviously was inspired by an incident with my son, but a lot of it also had to do with what had happened in the last couple of years. There were many viral messages spreading fear, hatred around the world on the internet, and I started thinking there must be another way to communicate and influence other people, right? So any small thing, quick thing that our listeners can do today or tomorrow to make our world better?
It is literally the tiniest thing that will change everything. So everyone has their good day and bad days, right? Even if you're the most positive person, you have the most, your life planned out, your life is in place, that one of the most kind of best person in the world will also have their down days. They will also have days where they get frustrated easily. They will also have days they feel tired and they don't want to do anything. And I think that's when what you tell yourself is the most important, because that's the difference of that message would be the most of a difference. So it's what you tell yourself when you're upset, what you tell yourself when you're happy, what you tell yourself basically whenever you encounter situations. So like a really example that I think a lot of people who are in Hong Kong will relate is that during rush hours, Hong Kong, you get the bus or the MTR, there's bound to be someone who's rushing. Someone's going to bash into your shoulder. Someone's going to walk past you quickly, and then something's going to happen. And I used to get very angry, or I used to get very why is everyone rushing? Why are they bumping into me? Why can't they look where they're going? That used to be a thing for me, and then that fuels how you feeling going to your next meeting, going to your next family dinner or whatever maybe you're going to. And it's the little things that you have to kind of catch yourself thinking about in the most kind of autopilot situation. So when you're just going about your day, when you're just going about your routine, what are you telling yourself in your head? So there was one incident where I was on a bus one time, and I kind of basically helped this lady off the bus with her bags and stuff. And then she left without saying thank you or even looked at me. She just kind of just didn't even acknowledge that I helped her. So I was so angry and I was so mad, oh my God, why did I help you? And then you don't even say thank you. I don't want you to bow to me or anything, but at least, acknowledge where I am and things. And I found out, and then that little split, 5 seconds encounter made me really upset for 2 hours of my night. Mm-hmm. And then I was just hold on a minute. I don't even know her name. I don't even know where she lives. I don't know anything about this lady. But it's mad how much that anger or how much that frustration can build up without people realizing. So I think, the tip or the message is that to think about what you're feeling most of the time. A lot of us have very busy lives. A lot of us are always rushing to one thing to the next thing and to the next thing to the next thing. And then same thing happens every week. So it's very easy to not think about what we're feeling or how we are approaching a situation, especially when you're with people who are very close, who are your family, because they're the easiest people that you can give out to. They're the easiest people that you can be frustrated to. So really kind of just look at what you're feeling a lot of the time. It's very hard to do. It sounds very simple. It's actually very hard to be checking in to your feelings a lot of times. And I think that really helps out a lot, because I spent 2 hours being mad at that lady who I don't even know. That 2 hours, I could have recorded a podcast. I could have written the show notes for it. I could have wrote something else. I could have done one task at work. So really, I guess, diverting your energy to something that you think is actually worthwhile to you, and just keep doing that, and then things will start to happen.
Yeah, that's very well said, mate. So every negative thought that comes to our mind, think of what other meaningful thing, leverage, and use that time to do, right?
Yeah, just think about, if you get frustrated about this thing, why is it making you upset? Is it reasonable to be upset for this long, or reasonable to be that upset for this long? And then I guess once you realize, okay, maybe it's not worth my time to really be annoyed about this thing for hours, then maybe it's not important, then you move on to the next thing. So you actually, in a way, reserving your energy for something actually is going to impact your life.
Yeah. Great, mate.
Thank you so much for your time today and all the inspirational share chat. And again, listeners, so Emery has his own podcast, Awkward Turtle at Work. He's also recently done a TEDx, which he will share his link on LinkedIn, I believe, when it's available. Thank you for making time for this important chat, and hope to see you around soon, man.
Yeah, of course. Well, lovely to chat with you, and it's a great podcast. I listened to quite a few episodes as well, so really great what you're doing, and keep it up.
Thank you, mate. All right, see you around.
All right, cheers.
Bye.
Bye.